This is the newly launched MOZA KS Pro wheel. Priced at $329 US, it is supposed to sit in MOZA's entry-level GT and Formula style lineup, below the GS and FSR series. But with the features like a full color screen, a huge number of RGB backlit buttons and encoders, dedicated flag lights, and a very solid build. I'm actually not sure if it really feels a tier below my daily driver, the GS V2P wheel, which to be fair, launched a couple of years ago. I've been testing it for a couple of months with the MOZA's 25mm R25 Ultra wheelbase, including some pretty intensive high force feedback sessions. So in this review, I will share my full experience with the KS Pro and compare it against the GS V2P. At the end, I will review whether this cheaper wheel has replaced the GS wheel as my new daily driver. Quick disclaimer, MOZA did send this wheel for me to review, but whether I'm biased or not, I will leave that up to you to decide. I also have a bunch of affiliate links in the description, so please use them if you want to support me. It's at no extra cost for you. When I unboxed the KS Pro, my first impression was that it looked and felt more premium than I expected at this price point. And one of the biggest reasons is the screen. The KS Pro has a 2.99-inch full-color display, which is something the GS V2P simply doesn't have. It's large enough to show key telemetry information clearly, but it doesn't make the wheel feel too bulky. Before using it, I thought the screen might be a bit of a gimmick, but after some tweaking in MOZA P House, I actually found myself using it a lot. Depending on game support, apart from standard telemetry like gear, speed, lap time, delta, RPM, fuel, and tire information, the screen can also display proximity radar and the track layout. The positioning of the screen is also spot on. It sits naturally in your line of sight, so you can glance quickly without blocking your view. The only downside is that you can't fully customize the layout through SimHub, but MOZA P House already gives you plenty of dashboard options, and for most use cases, it should be enough. After using it for a while, going back to the GS V2P without a screen honestly feels like a small downgrade. Both the KS Pro and the GS V2P are 300mm wheel, which I think is a really good sweet spot. They feel quick and responsive for Formula style cars, but not as twitchy as smaller wheel, such as the 270mm Fanatec Formula wheel I used to own. At the same time, they give you enough width and stability for GT3, Element P, and road cars, without feeling as slow as larger round wheel. The housing on the KS Pro is made from carbon fiber reinforced composite, so it's not a true forged carbon fiber like the material used on the GS wheel. It's more like a carbon fiber reinforced plastic, which makes sense given the price point. But the important thing is rigidity. The KS Pro feels as solid as the GS wheel, with no noticeable flex under high force feedback. Even when I tried pretty hard to twist it by hand, there was basically no movement. MOZA claims the core inside the KS Pro is a steel plate, which helps explain the wheel's impressive overall rigidity. Visually, the KS Pro still looks very cool. It has that forged carbon fiber style appearance, and unless you look very closely, you can't really tell it's not real forged carbon fiber. So yes, the GS V2P still wins in terms of material quality. Real forged carbon fiber does feel more premium. But structurally, the KS Pro feels strong, rigid, and well put together. The KS Pro is absolutely packed with inputs. On the front, you get 10 RGB backlit buttons, 5 backlit rotary encoders, 2 funky switches, and 4 thumb encoders. At the back, you get 2 magnetic shifters, 2 dual clutch pedals, and 2 additional rear buttons. The GS V2P has a similar number of controls, but the KS Pro feels more modern because both the front buttons and the rotary encoders are RGB backlit. On the GS wheel, only the buttons are backlit. The layout on both wheels makes a lot of sense on track. Despite having so many controls, everything is positioned around the grip area, so you don't need to move your hands much during a race. The front buttons on the KS Pro have a shorter travel and a stronger click. They don't feel as premium as the GS buttons, but they gave very clear feedback every time you press them, which is especially useful if you wear gloves.
Gloves! Steering wheel! Gloves and steering wheel, yeah!
The customizable RGB lighting also helps with the muscle memory. You can assign different colors to different functions, making it easier to find the right control quickly and accurately during a race. The rotary encoders are useful for settings like ABS, traction control, engine map, or fuel mix. You can also set the RGB background color and the selected indicator color separately, making it easier to see your current settings at a quick glance without taking your eyes too far away from the track. The thumb encoders on both wheels are well positioned and have a distinct click feel, so you can adjust the settings while keeping your hand on the grips without accidentally changing something mid-race. The KS Pro has 4 thumb encoders, while the GS wheel only has 2. However, the GS thumb encoders can also be pressed down, giving you 2 extra inputs. The thumb encoders on the KS wheel appear to be metal, and they definitely look more premium than the plastic ones on the GS wheel. I also strongly prefer the funky switches on the KS Pro. They feel more tactile and controlled when navigating menus or black boxes. On the GS wheel, they move more freely, and I find it easier to select the wrong options by mistake.
And your question is, what is your biggest mistake?
The biggest mistake.
At the back, the magnetic paddle shifters feel crisp and tactile on both wheels, but the KS Pro paddles have a more solid and muted sound. This is possibly because the KS Pro's composite housing helps dampen the pedal noise slightly, while the more rigid carbon fiber housing on the GS make the shifter sounds a bit more hollow. Both wheels have lower dual clutch pedals, which can also be mapped to functions like handbrake, push-to-talk, DRS, or anything else you need. The rev lights and the flag lights are another area where the KS Pro feels more modern. While the GS V2P uses a traditional 10 LED RPM strip, the KS Pro adds 12 rev lights and 6 dedicated flag lights, making RPM and race signal easier to distinguish at a glance without taking your eyes off the track. Overall, the inputs and the pedals on the KS Pro are not the most premium I've ever used, but the layout, feedback, lightning, and functionality are very strong for this price point. The grips on the KS Pro are covered in TPE soft rubber. They do have a slightly rubbery, almost slightly greasy feel, so they don't feel as premium as the microfiber leather grip on the GS wheel. But for everyday use, I actually think the TPE material is more practical. It provides enough grip, doesn't collect the dirt as easily, is easy to clean, and it should be more durable over time. Where the KS Pro really stand out is the grip shape. The middle section has a noticeable bulge that gives your palm something to push against, while the narrower lower section helps your hand sit naturally on the wheel. During high force feedback driving, this makes the wheel feel secure without needing to squeeze it too hard. That said, the thicker grips may not suit everyone. If you have smaller hands, you may find it a bit bulky. And because the TPE rubber is not breathable, your hands may sweat more during longer sessions. So overall, I think the grip shape is one of the KS Pro's highlights. It feels more ergonomic and confidence-inspiring than the GS wheel, but the material and the thickness still comes down to personal preference. At the bottom of the KS Pro wheel, there is also an RJ port. This is mainly used to connect the wheel through MOZA's universal hub, so the wheel can communicate directly with the PC. That means the KS Pro can also be used on third-party wheelbases, as long as you have the correct mounting solution. Unfortunately, this feature is not included on the GS wheel. One thing to keep in mind is that neither wheel supports console gaming, both are PC only. I do hope MOZA can bring console support in the future, so that would provide more options for console sim races. So after using the KS Pro for a couple of months, has this cheaper wheel replaced my higher tier GS V2P as my new daily driver? Surprisingly, yes. To be clear, the GS wheel still feels more premium in terms of material. You get a microfiber leather grips and a real forged carbon fiber housing, but in actual use, the KS Pro feels more modern and more practical. You get a full color screen, RGB backlit rotary encoders, dedicated flag lights, better feeling funky switches, RJ ports supporting third-party wheelbases, and a very solid build. To be fair, the GS wheel platform was first launched in 2022, while the KS Pro is the latest generation 2026 product. So it's not surprising that the KS Pro can pack in more features at a lower price thanks to the technology improvements, but it also shows how much sim racing gear has evolved over the past few years. So overall, the KS Pro is not perfect, but for $329 US, it is extremely hard to beat. Well done, MOZA.